right, so it does have one more person to get ready. Huh? One more. Oh boy, I tell you. All right. But while one is getting ready, let us just start off by, saying that. All right, out of the way. By just asking in general, Gustavo, yes, it's just you, right? So how should, the CISO, the data protection officer, when they're talking about security or they're talking about privacy to the C-suite, what are some of the things that they should pay attention to in terms of speaking to the C-suite about security and about privacy and the things that are important? I know I outlined earlier today just some simple mechanisms for talking to the C-suite, but sometimes there's a gap where, they don't understand what the technical people are saying, and, and vice versa. But it is an imperative for the actual, message to get across. And usually there's a misalignment between, what is it that the business says that it wants and what it expects and what is delivered. How should we approach that?
That's a good question. Yes, no? Do I use that microphone? All right, let's use this one. So if I understand you, I am the CISO or I'm in the IT side of things and I have to explain to the C-suite. My recommendation would be make it simple, right? Sometimes a common error I see is we go with a lot of technicalities up there. I go and ask, I need a tool for endpoint protection. They don't care, nor they will understand what I'm talking about. I want to secure my storage file system, whatever. Who cares? That's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is to avoid X million dollars lost per minute if my business goes down. That's what matters to them. So to me is keep it simple, keep it down to the business terminology and measure it. In my mind, measuring, give it numbers is going to be the easiest way for me to try to push for a new tool, platform, change or refresh.
Well,
thank you. That's a great question. I have I'll use an example. I have a client that has to abide by New York State Department of Financial Services. And that's similar, it has some similarities to DPA. One of the functions in the revision that just happened this year is where I have to have a meeting with the CEO and I have to present as their VCISO to the board of directors. The CEO is busy man, everything. So he only meets with the person I report to once a month for maybe 30 minutes, right? Which is a direct report of his. So now I have to make time with this gentleman once every 3 months, and then I have to present to the board. So what Gustavo was saying is spot on, right? Is simplify it as much as possible because you have to communicate what ends up being enterprise risk, what ends up being financial implications, what ends up being things that right now are showing up on the agendas of board of directors, on the agendas of any reputational risk, as was discussed on some of the earlier presentations. So as long as you can simplify it. Gustavo showed a dashboard, for example, with the Simplex platform. That speaks their language, right? There's places where it can create the monetized value on what it means, what's the impact, what's the potential impact around that. You speak that language to them, they'll understand communicating that risk, and they'll better be able to fund you. Andel, that's a great question, because normally in events like this, that's the number one thing people outside afterwards start asking me. How can I communicate to the CEO? How can I communicate to the board of directors? Because remember, their concerns is numbers, black, red, in terms of, are we profitable or not? They really don't spend that much time with risk, but as long as you can quantify it, that they'll understand that language And you'll be surprised. You'll end up being able to have better conversations with them. And most importantly, because with that question is always, how can I get funding to purchase some of these great tools that have been demonstrated so far?
Back to you.
They're good? Okay, great. Okay, go ahead.
So one thing. Oh, perfect. One thing that I'll add to that is a lot of times we do talk about, the investment that's going into these types of solutions and, how to invest in it or how to outline how much it's going to cost. But the one thing that I will say where we've seen the most success is as a client, lean into your partner and lean into your vendor in that process for us to help you identify that ROI. We do want to stay agnostic, right? And we do want to make sure that you do your own findings as well, because in some cases, vendors do try to infiltrate that process and make it seem like you're saving millions when you're really not. But when you have good partners like Info Exchange, when you have good partners and make a right decision by investing your money with the right product and the right vendor, they have plenty of tools on their end to help you identify those cost savings, and more often than not, have various different assessments. We were just doing a call the other day, and we brought up the idea to the team to do a value assessment on the POC, on the product itself, and it's something that they kind of, stepped back and said, you know what, that's actually a great idea that we're going to lean into, and if you guys can help us out with that, that would be excellent.
Definitely. Thank you for that, Ariel. Another question that comes up all the time is, and this is a question for one. How do I know if my endpoint protection is effective, yes or no? Meaning, for years, I've been using X tool, and every year I renew X tool. And every now and then, the IT team may say to me, well, we have to renew. And if I ask the question, how effective the tool is, they are unable to say, yes, it is effective. No, it's not. The only thing that they may be able to say is, well, as far as I know, we have not been breached as yet, as far as I know. So how do you differentiate, or how do you tell which tool in terms of endpoint protection is more effective or is actually effective?
So it's microphone's weird. Hello?
All right, cool.
Let's really loud. So it's an interesting question because you don't know what you don't know. And I'll give you I find this hilariously funny. Whenever somebody suspects that their workstation server has been infected, usually the first task after everybody freaks out is scan the hard drive. Wait a minute, pausing there for a second. You're going to scan the system that you think is infected with the same tool that you think let it get infected.
In the first place.
In the first place,
Yeah.
yeah. So how you would know whether or not your current technology is effective is through a continual cycle of, I believe in this, re-earning business.
Mm-hmm.
We all have a great partnership with Info Exchange. Why not do your due diligence every year and try out new technology, see what's out there, see what works. If you don't want to go that far, you can always use KPIs that you build internally. Measure how often you have to reformat a system because something happened. But there's internal KPIs that you can use, and that process of continual rejuvenation, continual trials of new technologies keep us as vendors honest, and it has us re-earning customers' business all the time.
Yeah, one of the things that we do as well, Juan, is to kind of point our customers to the MITRE Ingenuity test framework, where they actually go through and they test, different endpoint products against the different adversaries, and they test it to see how effective it is. And I think that's a good measure as well, independent measure, of how good an endpoint protection is. So we recommend that look at the data, make your own decisions, but it becomes very clear as to which are the better products and the ones that can protect you and the ones that can't. But very good suggestion in that run something side by side, reevaluate every year. Great.
After the work coordinates and reevaluating versus the con.
Definitely. Any questions from the floor while I continue?
I have t-shirts.
Okay.
We have some gifts here, t-shirts.
Yes.
This time I have some too, so good questions get something, not yours. Something.
Yes. Mhm. Turn it on.
That was the mom.
Hello.
There you go.
Yeah, man, leave it on.
So as a data protection officer, one of the tools that I use to help me and possible CISO or the CIO to help the organization come to the decision that we're talking about now in terms of security protection, cyber protection, is Section 45 of the Act, which talks about the data impact assessment. One of the things I was looking forward to hearing was how are you, or how have you, or will you use that section of the Act, especially in the Jamaican context, to help organizations go through that process of determining what are the risk for data subjects, right? From a security standpoint, whether it be inside or outside, and then how you use that tool, that process to determine the type of security that you need to put in place based on what the legislation is speaking to.
Very good question. Anyone wants to take that, Will? In terms of data impact assessment and how that informs what tools you will then deploy or implement.
Definitely. So I think that's one of the first steps around it, right? And then when you do that assessment, you match it up to tools that will feed into whatever parts of those compliances or the Data Protection Act in this case, right? But one thing that Juan was saying that was refreshing is, and I call it in terms of old school, I say ITSM, continual improvement. So I think as part of so putting my CIO CISO hat as part of any cybersecurity program and hygiene in general, you should always be evaluating the tools. You should always be meeting the compliances that you need to meet at the bare minimum, but you should always be striving to do better. And in that continual improvement, whether it's yearly, like Juan was saying, you want to compare it to the efforts around it. You may not have the bandwidth to do that, right? But it still should be done because there's always new threats coming out. There's always new features and new vendors that may come out and they give your organization a competitive advantage against bad actors. But also, like we said earlier about talking to the C-suite, talking to the board of directors, if you can sit there and do more with less, which is a term they all love to hear and spew out, you can do that. So you always see yourself to, at the bare minimum, meet the compliances because you don't want to pay fines, you don't want to, but at the most, you should always have the interest of the organization at heart, which should always have for just about anything in IT and cybersecurity, I would say, continual improvement. So let's do better, than we did last year and improve. Those tool sets and stuff like that you can purchase. There's some great tool sets that are here and other ones that you can evaluate in the market. You should always keep the vendors honest. That's why it's refreshing what Juan just said.
So anyone else want to comment on that question before I do? I guess not. So let me comment on it. Oh, okay.
One thing to point out there, and one of the benefits of this.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear me? So I can't hear now.
Yeah.
So one of the benefits of this continual improvement cycle is that it forces us from the vendor side to re-engage. I don't like stale sales reps, those sales reps that show up once a year and say, where's my renewal? And the reason why I don't like it is you guys as customers, and your C-suite is your own customer as well, don't get to understand what new stuff is coming. This whole concept of XDR, you know, it's developed over the last, I would say, 1.5 to 2 years. But those vendors that are stagnant haven't started thinking about XDR, and they're doing you guys a disservice by not mapping your up and coming security strategy to new technologies that are coming out there. Section 45 is a great example of mapping your data. But whatever tool set you use to do that has to be able to satisfy the requirement now and what the requirement will be in 3 years from now. So you have to continually reevaluate your data, those tools, and all of that sort of stuff that's there. So continual improvement, continual assessment, and continual monitoring of your data, I think will do everybody a lot of good.
You know, how we approach it at Info Exchange is that there are various stages of the to protect your data. And one of the first things that you have to realize is, you know, what data do I actually have? And, you know, that resides everywhere, meaning on a mobile phone, on different endpoints, on your servers, in your file servers, in the cloud, in file stores. So how do you first find, then categorize, and then associate? And when I say associate, meaning that you're associating with particular quantum of data or type of data to the risk that the organization will face. And how do you actually put a number to that in terms of, well, I have now discovered, I have now classified. Now, how do I put a number to the data that I've found and classified? And through those classification, how do I then reclassify or automatically classify new data, which is created every day? So that whole process of making sure that you discover, classify, quantify, and then you move on to the whole process of, okay, we now know what we have. We know the category of data. We know the risk associated with it to a large extent because we have associated each category of data with some quantum of risk. How do I then move to the next stage of protecting that data and doing so where it doesn't break the bank? And if I can't protect that data, what is it? What other mitigation procedures do I need to take? Do I need insurance? What do I need to do thereafter? So that is how we go about approaching it. And we actually have a partnership in place, which we did not seek to reveal today, that actually deals with the data privacy side of stuff that we'll talk about later down. It's a fairly new partnership. I mean, a couple of months old. But we are actually looking to see how is it that we can actually help our customers to automate. The problem with data mapping is that how we are doing it now is kind of manual, and it does not take into consideration that data is actually something that is growing daily, and is created daily, and is deleted daily, and is edited daily. So how do you now put a process in place that continually monitors, maps, classifies, quantifies, and then because of that classification, you can then say, for this classification of data, here are the security tools that I can put in place to automatically protect that data. So we're joining not only security aspect of data, but also the privacy side and automating both. So the reason why we didn't reveal it today is because it will take us some more thinking as to how to really get it so that it is seamless. All of our solutions that we have brought to market, Zscaler, Sentinel-1, Nutanix Simplex is all about simplicity, removing complexity. So until we can get that right, we won't reveal it. But I'm figuring that by next quarter, we will. I hope that helps. All right, cool.
Yeah, give him a t-shirt.
Yeah.
With my army.
All right, so the next piece that our customers ask us about is, if we have, how do we know that we have actually put the right technologies in place? So, Ariel, this is a question for you.
Yeah,
Over the years, I've spent a lot of money, in their opinion, on firewalls, routers, advanced networking, VPNs, cloud infrastructure, data centers. But yet, every month, every week, those that are spending more than I do, I'm hearing that they have been hacked. Now, if I'm doing what they're doing and they have more money than I have, then what is it that we are all doing wrong? Why is it that even after spending so much money on technology that we have told our C-suite that, guess what, this new thing is gonna work, and yet we end up being a victim of an attack? What is going wrong and what needs to change?
It's a mindset, right? I think when you're talking about continuously improving your posture, it's a mindset that you need to plug into, because once you stop learning, once you stop innovating, once you stop designing, is when you'll be behind the ball. And that's when things start to get a little dicey. I feel like massive companies, smaller companies always have different projects. They always have different things as a priority. Companies who come together and map priorities amongst departments are the ones who are most successful. Because once you start siloing projects is once you start losing communication, visibility, transparency. And a lot of folks that we talk to suffer from that every day, whether it's IT not talking to security, security not talking to, or even HR not talking to finance, whatever it is. So I feel like from the ones that we've talked to that are successful, they have clear outlined goals, objectives that they meet as a company, no matter what department you're in. And to Will's point and the team earlier as well, just continuously improving your posture and making your way down that path slowly but surely will get you to the places that you want to be. Will it cost you? Yes, but we're in a world where you have a new vendor probably knocking on your door every other week, right? But that even brings my point that I said earlier, partners like Info Exchange will show you the way, will lead you into that promised land of having a safe and secure posture with the vendors that they brought here today, the vendors that they have in their portfolio. So by trusting the people who you do business with, but also looking at yourself internally and having that honest conversation with yourself of, do I have clearly outlined objectives, not only with myself or with my team, but with other teams around me? What are they focusing in on? How can we work together? That's the same thing that we're doing at Zscaler in a way, by having different use cases that fall into different departments. We often get, the network team, IT team, security team, all in a room, and some of them haven't talked to each other in weeks, or some of them are meeting each other for the first time in some cases. So again, I think that's one way. It is a very touchy subject, because is there an answer? If there is, I want to know what it is, but you got to almost find your own way and forge your own path. And again, companies like Info Exchange keep you on that path.
Gustavo?
Wow. How do I know I'm using the right tools?
Yeah,
Right?
how do you know?
How-
I mean, you're an organization and, you know, you're spending money on your
I'm spending-
firewalls and all of that, but it's just, you know, yeah, and you see the bigger guys getting hacked.
I mean, it's not always related directly to how much I'm spending. You know, I could be the small guy spending a little budgets, but how am I using those tools?
Yeah.
I think it's leveraging if we are all honest and if we start raising hands, how many of us are maximizing the potential of the tools I already have? Even if it's old technology, how many of us are maximizing? I mean, many of us are barely scratching the surface of what I have. And you said earlier, I'm paying a renewal for X, and it became an OpEx for my company. Everybody knows that invoice comes from every year. They don't even know what it is, but it looks familiar, right? Check, approved. How am I using it? So in my mind, it's not spending more or less than the big ones or small ones. It's about how am I maximum? Am I listening to those vendors every year, every quarter to see what new things they have in that platform that I'm already paying for? Am I using it correctly? Am I following best practices? Even if I did during the initial implementation, 1 year later, it's not the same, right? Things change. So to me, it's all about maximizing what I have first, and then I compare myself to the big ones or smaller ones.
Plus, you have the situation where, you know, what you bought does not fit the situation that you're now in. So
Exactly.
therefore, you need to reevaluate.
I would add to the discussion as well. I think there needs to be an internal IT fire in the company, not in a bad way, but there needs to be a certain level of curiosity that organization has. You have all of these bad guys poking at every possible hole they can to get on in. Well, internally, we need to do the same thing and poke all of our tools to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing and be one step ahead of what the bad guys are going to be trying to do to us. Internal pen testing, internal red team testing.
Not hearing you, yeah.
Yeah.
Just pull it up close and say again,
Sorry, do I have to say all that again?
please.
So I was gonna say, I think there needs to be an internal IT fire where internally the IT security organization thinks like the bad guys. The bad guys have nothing to do but to poke at all of the holes that they can find within your enterprise. Internally, as IT security practitioners, we need to do the same sort of thing and then map what we find to what our tools should be doing and decide, is this the right tool for me? Because this is what I found. But that continual, you know, using Will's word, continual improvement cycle needs to be that as well.
Yeah. We are in full agreement. Reevaluation is an essential part of your acquisition process. Another thing that really needs to take place is a lot of organizations speak about audit. And every year, when we speak to our customers, they talk about, I need to pass, my auditors are coming around and I really need to pass this audit. I really need to check those boxes. So the question that I always ask is the end game passing the audit, or is the end game actually, you know, being secure? And there are two different things. Not because you're compliant or auditable, it means that you're actually secure. And sometimes, you know, they seem a bit puzzled because they're saying, well, pass the audit. The auditor said, you know, I must have this, and this. And I said, most of the persons, the PayPals, the different banks that have been hacked, they passed the audit, but they were still hacked. So therefore, what different approach should companies take when it comes to, you know, audits and compliance versus actually having effective security in place? Will?
Can you guys hear me? Okay. No, that's a great question, and it ties into A lot of times with clients that I get involved with, they treat cybersecurity, they bring in an engagement, an MSSP, a VCSO, or whatever, and they treat it like a project, which a project by definition has a start date and an end date. The end date being passing the audit, right? Obtaining compliance, getting that certification. When in reality, cybersecurity is more of a program and it's iterative and ongoing, right? You can, like Andel said, you can be compliant today, still get hacked tomorrow with a 0-day exploit. I was having a conversation with James during lunch around that. And if you take that approach where you treat it like a program, where you treat it where you want to be, you want to have everything in place, a lot of tasks are going to be repetitive tasks. Max had mentioned earlier about patch management. We were talking about that earlier too, about, doing it at least every 7 days, right? That's driven by compliances and that's driven by the insurance, right? But it's good practice. Maybe you don't have to do 7, you can do it every 3 days. Maybe it's overkill, or maybe you do emergency response when a 0-day exploit has come out, right? And stuff like that has happened. So these are the things where you really want to just get into that mindset of treating it where it's ongoing. You're only compliant as of, today, by the end of the day, let's say, but tomorrow you may be completely out of compliance because of these exploits or vulnerabilities that are found, or because someone in your team hasn't done the patches, by day 7, right? Or change management skipped because someone was out. One of the things that was said earlier that I wanted to touch on was the how when these people spend more than me, but they were hacked. A lot of times organizations, what I've seen is that they purchase the tools and they think I bought the best tool, everything like that, install it, it's done. What Juan was saying, internal pen tests, I love that, right? I would even say, have somebody come through and sniff it, or don't 100% trust the vendors or the MSP that came in. Have somebody else, another set of eyes, right, to come in and see and make sure that it's configured correctly. And I say that because when I took on a role as CIO and I came in to do a transformation, we ripped out Cisco hardware to go with HP network hardware. When we ripped it out and the engineers went in there, now this is a place that was 24/7 high transaction network, and they were replacing the hardware after 10 years, it being end of life. They found out that the stuff, they replaced it to HP. They were trying to copy ACLs and stuff like that. They found out that it was actually set up backwards. So instead of restricting, right, this is a casino connected to a hotel. Instead of restricting, it was wide open to the hotel. So it was wide open for 10 years to the hotel because they purchased Cisco 10 years prior, ran it till its end of life, never turning anything off, right? Because it's a 24/7 environment, and it basically was unsecure the entire 10 years.
So test, and test again.
Yep, and like everyone said, don't trust even your vendors. Don't, sometimes get a second set of eyes just to come in and do snip tests, or internally do a pen test on your own stuff.
Gustavo?
Makes me think about backups and disaster recovery, right? I mean, I've done audits myself with other professionals where the auditor focuses on, give me your backup reports, give me your replication reports. And it's a long list of jobs, success. And the auditor says, okay, this is the evidence, check, green, you're set. I mean, who cares about backup job? I want to fail over A to B. I want to run this company from that building over there. That's a true test. That's a true validation of my business continuity policy, right? If I don't do that however often I want to be, I'm not really doing it.
Yeah, and and I have to be careful how I say this, but we still have policies in place that says that our recovery point for our applications is 24 hours or more. And we can live with a recovery time of a couple of days. And that is built into quite a bit of our corporate policies as the standard by which the IT department operates. And I can tell you, there is no company, not even a very small company, that is dependent on their systems that can afford 24 hours of data loss, meaning they're backing up once a day. None. I don't know of any, but yet it is still part of the policy. No business impact assessment has been done, just like what you said in terms of data impact assessment. None of that has been done to say, what is it really on the ground? Can my users, can my employees, can my contractors actually work if the systems are down, and for how long? And if they actually have some data loss, how long will it take for that data to actually be rekeyed and be resynced and for us to be up and running again? So therefore, I have to say that those with policies that says 24 hours RPO, which is recovery point, meaning that's how much data you can afford to lose, and a recovery time of days, that's just something that you're fooling yourself, and it's what we call a corporate lie. You really can't survive without your systems. That once you start to use them as the driver for growth. And for most businesses today, if you're using technology and the data that you have as driver for growth, you are left behind. And we have seen it over the past 2 decades. So we need to actually move to change that and put technologies in place that will enable us to lower those, I would say, improbable, because there's no way that you can survive with a 24-hour worth of data loss, a whole day of maybe 100 employees keying into a system and you just lost it and that's it. No, that's not going to happen. And that's not something that you should actually entertain. Now, let me get to my last question, because I hear that time to wrap up. We spoke about zero trust today. And, never trust, always verify. Gustavo, from your point of view, why zero trust? Why should corporations, small businesses, large and small, be looking, and medium, be looking at zero trust? Why the change from the traditional security practices that we have always looked at and so forth? Why this zero trust has come about? Why and what are the benefits?
We could spend hours answering that question. First of all, attacks are not coming from the outside only, right? So attacks are more sophisticated than ever. The outside, the perimeter is okay to protect. Of course, we need it, but it's more dangerous inside. So to me, since attackers are more sophisticated, software has evolved, everything has evolved. It's easy for anyone, not technical, anyone to download their own virus or hire ransomware as a service. Ransomware is sold as a service now, right? I can ask for it and try to attack my competitor. So being so easy, in my mind, we don't have a choice. It's not even an option. It shouldn't be an option. I have to protect the inside. And to me, when I look at networks, when I look at companies using VLANs as security mechanisms, VLANs are not security mechanisms. Let's remember that. They are not. It's a sort of network segmentation, not created for security reasons. Used for security reasons, yes, but it's not meant to be a security mechanism. And by the way, during the years, everybody has been creating routes between VLANs, so it's full bidirectional traffic anyway allowed, right, between VLANs. So again, I don't know how to answer this in a very short way, but to me, we don't have a choice. We have to protect the inside. We have to look into every application, every component, every server, every port, and decide which ones are valid or not, and use the right technologies to allow or block those flows of traffic.
Ariel?
I think it's something that everyone should be taking a look at, just to have that internal check, see where those gaps are, see what you need to spend time on, see what you need to come together with the other departments and work on. At the very least, you are making your route clearer to keep yourself safe, your employees safe, your clients safe. It's a new way of thinking. It's one that you have to adjust to. But if you adjust to it, cost will come down, complexity will come down. It's funny. Sometimes you get on a demonstration with a vendor, and that's what they say. But can they back it up? A lot of these companies may, But in some cases, with companies like the one up here and the ones that you talk to, you need to see that if the proof is in the pudding. And if the proof is in the pudding, you're on your way to having a secure environment that will last for years. Zero Trust is not a product. Again, Zero Trust is not a product. It's a framework. A framework has never failed anyone. If anything, it has bolstered your system down and improved your posture and has made you stronger. Why are you not going to look towards something that will make you stronger?
Well,
Just to add to this a little bit, passwords used to be one of the most secure things out there. They're the key to get into any system out there. But now we need two-factor authentication because we can't trust the password. If you can't trust the password, you can't trust two-factor authentication. You can't trust that the person on that keyboard is that person. And I think that lack of trust is the reinforcement mechanism of why we need Zero Trust. The framework, that extra check to validate that you are who you are, what you're doing is what you want to do. At the end of the day, I see it as, it's the common theme today, trust but verify. Always trust but verify what's going on down to the user, what the user is doing there. So Zero Trust, I'll take it from a framework, is a mindset. We also have to think of it that way as well.
well,
Last thing to chime in on this and what I said earlier, Zero Trust just seems like the continual improvement and what it's gotten to, right? I don't know what the next 3-5 years, if there's something beyond Zero Trust, because you're not trusting anything, you're verifying, but it's where we've gotten to. Like what Juan just said, passwords used to be the most secure thing, then you needed to get to MFA, right? And that's how I view it. I view it like, okay, it's gotten to that point. It's almost like we've had it up to here. You trust your kids, and then they break curfew, they break curfew again, they break curfew again, and all right, I've had it up to here. I'm doing this as a last ditch effort. I'm not saying Zero Trust is that last ditch effort, but it's a framework that works. But I think it's something that we've just gotten exasperated with so many breaches happening, even though we've tried all these best practices to get to the point of zero trust. And there's still going to be something in 3, 4, 5, or 10 years that's going to be that much better, because the threat actors, they're just, licking their lips, just trying to figure out how we can get past it. Because fortunately and unfortunately, just like we're all gathered here today, in some of these countries where the bad actors, it's part of their economy, they're gathered in a room like this today, throwing out shirts, trying to say, talking about ransomware as a service. How do I move up, to become HR of that company that does ransomware as a service? So it's cat and mouse.
It's a business.
Yeah.
yes,
It is.
definitely. So thank you very much, my panelists.